Easiest slash hardest characters to play in Street Fighter 6. We're gonna have a tier named easiest, easy, normal, hard, very hard. Now, this is mostly meant for beginner players. So if you're somebody who has never touched a Street Fighter, which are the easiest slash hardest characters for you to pick up and why? So I'm gonna go and order them one by one and put characters in tiers, and then I'll show you why I think each character or like each set of characters belong in each category. I think it makes it the easiest rather than just talking about every individual character and why they're easy, hard, very hard, and just rather put them in the categories of why they're difficult. So the easiest characters, in my opinion, to pick up in this game if you just started playing Street Fighter are Ryu, then Luke, Unknown, and Marissa. I think those four are the easiest characters to pick up in the game for sure if you're a beginner, simply because their game plan is very, very simple. Ryu's game plan, Luke's game plan, Unknown's game plan, and Marissa's game plan, they're all pretty simple in its core. They all want to achieve something by itself, and there aren't necessarily any hard inputs for you to learn. That is like the biggest difference for me between this and like any other tier. There aren't any direct inputs which are like incredibly hard to pick up and learn. So something like charge inputs aren't a thing at all. So I think these characters for sure, if you're trying to just pick up Street Fighter right now, you don't know who to play, whether it be Modern or Classic, pick up any one of these to learn the game. You're gonna have a really fun time. Now let's go over the easy characters, which are Blanca, E Honda, Guile, and Zangief. Now, why did I put these four characters, especially Honda, here rather than putting them in the easiest tier? Honda's game plan is incredibly simple, so why would he be here? So the reason why I put these characters in easy is because they require more execution, if that makes sense. Blanca, Honda, and Guile all have charge inputs. By itself, that already is like difficult for a beginner to learn and pick up. It is a lot more difficult than playing the easiest, if that makes sense. This is like basically my reasoning why I think those characters are easy, because they're easy in essence, but you need like an extra step in order to learn them. Guile has charge inputs, and his game plan is pretty simple, but still charge inputs are charge inputs. Honda, really simple game plan, but charge inputs. Blanca, really simple game plan and charge inputs. Zangief, overall, he just has like not the greatest buttons to just like get into and learn. He's just a grappler. He's a bit of a harder grappler than Unknown just because of more input requirement. That's why I put them there. Okay, let's go over normal. I think normal characters to learn this game are Lily, Kimberly, JP, and Ken. Now, why is Ken so high up in comparison to these characters? Simply for me, I believe the combo execution of Ken is a lot harder than any of the characters like below him, and his dash command is also like a lot more different to do. So when I was playing the beta, I thought Ken was like pretty hard to play next to like Chun-Li just because of those reasons. It's mostly like an execution thing. The higher we go up and the harder it becomes, the more it's about actually learning execution and a bunch of other stuff. JP is fine, Lily is fine to learn as well. I think like Lily having resource management is also why I put her like up here rather than like around this area right here. Kimberly is just a bit harder in general to play. So yeah, normal tier, I don't really need to explain much. It's just a bit more difficult than these because either more execution requirement on inputs or I need a sword. Now we're gonna go over hard. Hard for me and personally is gonna be DJ, Cammy, and Jury. These characters by itself have unique things that make them more difficult than the rest of the cast. For Cammy, it's her hooligan Oki and understanding of actual melee setups and a bunch of that. For DJ, I believe it's also a lot of execution. He also has charge inputs. He has a lot of feints, so it's a lot of thinking to do. And for Jury in specific, I think the only reason I put Jury really here is because of her game plan and her level 2. I think her level 2 is really difficult for people to just like learn and master like on the spot, especially if you're like somebody who's never played a fighting game before. So I'm putting these characters here. They're just harder to play than the rest. Now we get to the hardest characters in the game, and they're all very unique reasons why. So the hardest characters in this game, in my opinion, is going to be Dhalsim, Chun-Li, and Jamie. Now, why are these characters the hardest in comparison to all of these above? I will go over it now. All these characters require very specific knowledge of fighting games as a whole. So as somebody who is a complete beginner, this is going to be your worst nightmare. Jamie requires a lot of good execution. He has no fireball, so you can't just like be like in a comfortable spot with him ever unless you know exactly what you're doing. His resource management is very complicated for somebody who's just starting the game, where you have to choose between neutral or pressure and why. You also need to learn a lot more moves than other characters in the game since you get more, you know, the more you like level up. Chun-Li in specific is just a hard character on its own. A lot of execution things you have to do. You have an air game you need to really worry about too. You have air combos, which other characters do not have in the game. You have charge inputs, and you have a very complicated neutral in my opinion. Dhalsim's pretty much the same case, where I feel like for a beginner it will be very hard to choose when to go in with his teleport, when to use Yoga Flame, when to actually try the zone, and just a bunch of the system mechanics for him are like very odd in comparison to like the characters below him. So these are my reasonings. If you want to pick any of the characters as a new Street Fighter player, again, I highly would suggest anyone from the easiest to normal category. And if you're somebody who who is already a bit more experienced and want a little more, hard to very hard is pretty much your best bet. Now, to be honest, even character popularity doesn't really like say the truth on that one, because even like a majority of players do play Cammy. A lot of people actually are interested in other characters that are up here, like Jury's pretty popular too. Ken's pretty popular too. DJ's pretty popular. So these are my reasonings. Obviously with modern controls though, so if you're somebody who just plays modern controls, everything gets a bit easier. So even characters up here are like a lot less complicated, but I still think like the first row is pretty much your best bet, and then the second row follows after, and if you're like somewhat experienced, the third row.